She waited helplessly with her broken robot. A human technician came to help her. Lyra had been awake for hours, her small hands stained with oil and scorch marks from her latest repairs. The cold light of the mining colony's artificial sun flickered above, struggling to push warmth into the vast, metallic halls. Around her, the hum of machinery filled the air, a constant reminder of the colony's purpose, extraction and survival. On this remote outpost, orbiting a frozen planet far from the nearest human or alien settlement, life was not easy. Every engineer, every technician, every worker fought against the harshness of space and the unforgiving machinery that kept them alive. KIV-9, her personal robot, had always been at her side through all of it. The small machine, a sleek combination of alien engineering and practical utility, had been her companion for many years. It moved with a precise grace, its sensors scanning everything in the lab, keeping track of tools, schedules, and maintenance logs. But more than that, KIV-9 had become a friend, a reliable presence that understood her routines and needs. While it could never speak like a living being, its subtle movements and the way it anticipated her actions made Lyra feel less alone. Today, however, the quiet hum of the lab was replaced by an unnatural silence. KIV-9 sat frozen, its limbs stiff, its sensors dim. Sparks flickered briefly along its chassis, then faded. Lyra's heart sank. She had seen machines break before, but never KIV-9, never her companion. Panic rose within her, though she tried to calm herself. She ran her hands along the robot's arm, checking connections and circuits. "KIV, respond," she whispered, her voice trembling. There was no reply, only the occasional flicker of power. The cause of this disaster was obvious, but no less cruel. A violent electromagnetic storm had hit the colony last night. Though the colony's shields had absorbed most of the energy, the storm had leaked through cracks in the hull, surging through the systems. Lights had flickered, sensors had gone haywire, and machines had short-circuited. Most of the colony's equipment had survived, though some required hours of careful maintenance. But KIV-9 had been hit hardest. Its core processors had been fried, circuits fused, and some of its alien components now unreadable even to Lyra. She sank into a chair, exhausted, staring at the robot. Her mind raced with ideas, with solutions she had learned over years of engineering. She tried diagnostic scans, rewiring circuits, and even replacing fuses and power cores. Nothing worked. Each attempt ended with another spark, a small smoke trail, and a sinking feeling of failure. She felt helpless, a sensation she had rarely experienced. For hours, she refused to give up. She traced wires, examined memory cores, and adjusted circuitry. Sometimes she whispered to KIV-9, hoping her voice alone could coax some response. "You'll be fine," she said. "I'll fix you, I promise." The words felt hollow even to her. The robot, once so full of life and purpose, was now just metal and broken circuits. The lab felt emptier than ever. Around her, the colony carried on. Other engineers repaired their own systems, miners worked tirelessly, and automated drones glided through the halls, performing routine checks. But Lyra's lab remained silent, filled only with her frustrated sighs and the occasional sizzle of failing circuits. She knew she could keep trying, but the storm had caused damage she had never encountered. Some components were alien, designed for systems far beyond human or even her own understanding. She needed help, but where could it come from? She remembered hearing whispers of a human technician, a specialist who had traveled across galaxies to fix machines no one else could. The humans, known for their resourcefulness and courage, had a reputation for solving problems that others considered impossible. Many in the colony doubted a human could handle such advanced alien technology, but Lyra had no choice. She reached for the communication terminal, sending a message into the void, pleading for assistance. Hours turned into days as she waited. Each time a shuttle passed the orbiting station, her heart leapt, hoping it carried a human who could help. But none arrived. She continued her work, maintaining the rest of the lab and the colony, but KIV-9's stillness loomed over her like a shadow. The robot's silence became a constant companion, a reminder of her failure and helplessness. Lyra began to analyze the robot again, looking for anything she might have missed. She examined the core processors, tracing each line of alien circuitry. The design was sophisticated, far beyond anything she had worked on before, but she refused to give up. She remembered the long nights she had spent repairing mining drones and colony systems, learning from every mistake. And she had learned that patience, observation, and persistence often revealed solutions that brute force could not. As she worked, she noticed subtle changes in KIV-9. A faint flicker in its visual sensor, a twitch in its arm joint. Small signs barely perceptible but enough to spark hope. "You're still in there," she whispered. "I know you are." She adjusted her tools, replaced delicate circuits, and carefully reconnected wires that had been fused by the storm. Sweat dripped from her brow, her hands trembling from both exhaustion and anticipation. She refused to leave, refusing to admit that even the humans she hoped for might not come in time. Finally, after what felt like endless hours, she paused to rest. Sitting back, she looked at KIV-9 and sighed. Even if she could not fix it alone, she had tried everything she knew. Perhaps it was time to accept that help was needed from beyond the colony, but asking for help was not easy. Lyra had always relied on herself, on her skill, on her knowledge. To reach out to a human was to admit weakness, but necessity left her no choice. That evening, as the cold artificial sun dipped below the horizon, she sent a detailed message across the communication network. She described KIV-9's design, the damage caused by the storm, and her own failed attempts at repair. She included schematics and data logs, hoping that the human technician would understand. Once the message was sent, she felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief that she had done everything possible to seek help, and anxiety over whether anyone would respond. Days passed with no reply. Lyra continued her work on minor repairs throughout the colony, keeping herself busy to avoid thinking about KIV-9's lifeless form. Every night she returned to the lab, hoping for a spark, a sign of life. Each flicker of power, each soft beep from a diagnostic tool became a reason to hope. Her bond with KIV-9 was deep, built on years of cooperation and understanding. The robot had been her partner, her friend, and now she felt its absence more acutely than ever. She began to talk to KIV-9, even though she knew it could not respond. "We'll get through this," she said softly one night, brushing her hands along its cold metal arm. "I won't give up on you, not ever." The words, though directed at a machine, gave her comfort. She knew that in the quiet of the lab, the robot seemed almost alive, as if it could sense her determination. Then, one morning, a faint ping sounded from the communication terminal. Lyra froze, heart racing. A message had arrived. It was from a human technician confirming receipt of her distress call. The message was simple but full of confidence. The human would come. Lyra could scarcely believe it. Hope, long dormant, surged through her. The impossible seemed suddenly possible. As she prepared for the human's arrival, Lyra reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Years of engineering, long nights of repairs, the storms, the isolation, all of it had led to this moment. She realized that even in the harshest environments, even when hope seemed lost, persistence and courage could make a difference. And now, help was on the way, not from a fellow alien engineer, but from a human, a species she had heard of but rarely encountered in person. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Lyra worked through the colony's routines with heightened focus, keeping her mind busy while also preparing KIV-9 for repair. She cleaned the lab, organized tools, and made detailed notes on every aspect of the robot's systems. When the human arrived, she wanted everything ready for the revival of her companion. Finally, on the morning of the fourth day, the colony's sensors detected an approaching starship. Lyra's heart leapt. She watched as a small, sleek vessel descended toward the landing bay. The ship was unmistakably human, its design simple but functional, radiating a confidence that seemed to echo the reputation of its pilot. Lyra ran to the landing bay, excitement and nervousness swirling within her. The hatch opened and a man stepped out. His uniform was practical, his tools strapped across his body, and his eyes held a calm determination. He introduced himself as Jadden, the human technician. Lyra felt a wave of relief and hope wash over her. Perhaps KIV-9 could be saved after all. Perhaps, with this human skill, the bond she shared with her robot could be restored. As Jadden followed her to the lab, Lyra realized that the next hours would determine everything. KIV-9's fate rested in their hands, but for the first time in days, she felt certain that they would succeed. The human's presence brought not just expertise, but courage, patience, and determination. In the vast emptiness of the colony, hope had arrived. And as she stood beside her broken companion, preparing to hand over the delicate task of repair to Jadden, Lyra whispered softly to KIV-9, "You'll be okay. I promise." "Help is here." Lyra led Jadden through the winding corridors of the colony, her steps quick with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The lab where KIV-9 sat waiting was at the far end, its doors humming softly as they opened. Jadden's eyes scanned everything with calm attention, noting tools, machinery, and wiring setups, as if cataloging every detail in an instant. Lyra could not help but feel a surge of hope. This human, with his quiet confidence, might be the answer she had prayed for. Inside the lab, KIV-9 sat motionless in the center, wires dangling from its torso, circuits smoking faintly from the storm damage. The robot looked more fragile than Lyra remembered, almost as if it had aged decades in a single night. She ran her fingers along the arm, brushing away tiny sparks of residue, and whispered, "It's all yours now. Please save him." Jadden knelt beside KIV-9, examining every detail with meticulous care. "I see the damage," he said, his voice calm and steady. "This is going to be a challenge, but nothing impossible." His words carried a sense of assurance that Lyra hadn't felt in days. She studied him closely, noticing the way his hands moved over the circuits, careful yet confident, like he could read the robot's history just by touch. Hours passed as Jadden worked. Lyra watched, fascinated, learning from his techniques. He approached each problem with patience, methodically testing circuits, tracing energy flows, and analyzing the alien components she had struggled to understand. Unlike other engineers, who relied solely on protocol and manuals, Jadden seemed to combine knowledge with intuition. It was almost as if he could sense the robot's needs. At one point, he paused, leaning back to consider a particularly damaged section of KIV-9's core. "This part isn't standard," he muttered, examining the alien circuitry. "I haven't seen anything like this before. But I think I can work around it." He pulled tools from his bag, improvising connections and creating temporary circuits to bypass the fried components. Lyra watched, amazed at his creativity. Where she had seen only failure, he saw possibility. The colony's other engineers peeked into the lab occasionally, whispering among themselves. Humans rarely ventured this far, and even rarer was a human capable of working on alien technology. Many had doubted that anyone could repair KIV-9. Now, seeing Jadden's calm competence, they began to reconsider. Lyra felt a sense of pride mixed with relief. She had trusted in this human, and he had not disappointed. Despite the progress, the work was not without danger. One misstep could overload KIV-9's circuits or cause sparks that might ignite nearby equipment. Lyra carefully monitored the power flow, assisting Jadden where she could. Though she had never needed help before, she found comfort in their collaboration. It was different from her usual solitary work. This was teamwork, and it felt powerful. During a particularly delicate procedure, a minor spark leapt from one of KIV-9's exposed modules. Lyra jumped back instinctively, heart pounding, but Jadden only smiled. "It's okay," he said calmly. "These things happen, nothing we can't handle." He adjusted a connection, and the module stabilized. Lyra realized then that humans had a certain fearlessness, a willingness to act even when the outcome was uncertain. It was this bravery, combined with skill, that made them extraordinary. As the hours passed, Lyra and Jadden fell into a rhythm. She handed him tools, provided data from her logs, and shared her observations of KIV-9's unusual behaviors. He listened carefully, asking questions that were simple but insightful. Each time he learned something, he adjusted his approach, slowly bringing KIV-9 back from the brink. Lyra could feel her hope growing with every successful connection and every flicker of power. Jadden also seemed to understand the emotional bond Lyra had with KIV-9. He spoke to the robot softly as he worked, though it could not respond. "You'll be fine," he murmured. "We just need to get you back online." Lyra realized that this human had more than technical skill. He had empathy, an understanding that machines were not just tools, but companions to those who cared for them. Night fell over the colony, and the artificial sun dimmed. Lyra barely noticed, so focused was she on the delicate task at hand. She had prepared herself for exhaustion, but she had not expected the quiet satisfaction of learning from someone so skilled. The lab was filled with the soft hum of machinery, punctuated by occasional beeps from diagnostic tools and the rhythmic movements of Jadden's hands. It was a strange, comforting symphony of life returning to the broken robot. Midway through the night, Jadden paused to step back and assess his work. "The main circuits are responding," he said quietly. "We're making progress, but there's more to do. Some of the alien components are still unstable." He pointed to a small section of the robot's core where energy flickered unevenly. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with renewed determination. "We'll do it," she said simply. "We have to." For the next several hours, they worked side by side. Lyra followed Jadden's instructions, carefully adjusting wires and stabilizing circuits. Each small success brought a spark of hope. KIV-9's sensors began to flicker on, lights glowing faintly along its body. Lyra's heart lifted. For the first time since the storm, she felt that maybe, just maybe, her companion could be saved. During a brief break, Lyra and Jadden shared a quiet conversation. She asked him about humans, curious about how he had learned to repair machines so creatively. He explained that humans often relied on problem-solving through trial and error, intuition and adaptation. They learned from mistakes and improvised when no manual existed. Lyra listened, fascinated by this perspective. It was different from the rigid procedures she had always followed, but she could see its value. Jadden also asked about the colony and its challenges, learning about life on the frozen planet. Lyra spoke of long nights in the lab, the relentless storms, and the constant struggle to maintain systems that were far older than anyone realized. He listened patiently, absorbing every detail. She realized that this human, though from a distant species, could understand her world in ways few others could. By the time dawn approached, KIV-9 was showing significant signs of life. Its visual sensors glowed steadily, and small movements returned to its limbs. Sparks were now rare and circuits held steady. Lyra's hands shook with excitement and relief. She had never felt such gratitude for someone's skill, nor such admiration for their determination. Jadden, seeing her reaction, gave a modest smile. "It's not done yet," he said, but the pride in his voice was unmistakable. They continued working through the morning, refining connections and stabilizing alien circuits. Each adjustment brought KIV-9 closer to full functionality. Lyra marveled at Jadden's ability to understand the robot's design, to anticipate how components interacted. It was as if he could see the machine from the inside, predicting its behavior with almost instinctive accuracy. At one point, KIV-9 twitched its fingers and made a low, mechanical hum. Lyra gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "He's responding," she whispered. Jadden nodded, a quiet satisfaction in his expression. "Just a few more adjustments," he said. "We can bring him back completely." Lyra's excitement grew. After days of despair, she could finally feel hope turning into certainty. Throughout the day, other colony workers began to notice the progress. Rumors spread that the human technician was extraordinary, capable of repairing machines no one else could. Some came to observe, fascinated by the collaboration between human and alien, machine and engineer. Lyra felt a quiet pride, knowing she had made the right decision to call for help. By evening, KIV-9 was nearly operational. Its movements were smooth, its lights stable, and its sensors fully functional. Lyra stood beside Jadden watching the robot, a mixture of awe and gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't think anyone could fix him." Jadden smiled. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "It was you too. You knew him better than anyone. I just helped guide the repair." As the night settled over the colony once more, KIV-9 fully awakened. It moved its arms, testing strength and flexibility, and turned its sensors toward Lyra. A soft, mechanical whir indicated recognition. Lyra felt a wave of emotion. Her companion, her friend, was back. And it had been possible because of this human who had come from so far away, bringing not only skill but courage, patience, and empathy. Lyra realized that this moment marked a turning point, not just for her and KIV-9, but for the entire colony. Humans, often distant and mysterious, could be allies, problem solvers, and partners. Their ingenuity, combined with determination, could overcome challenges that others deemed impossible. And for the first time in many long days, Lyra felt a sense of calm and hope that she had not known since the storm had struck. As she and Jadden continued to fine-tune KIV-9 systems, Lyra made a silent vow. She would not take this help for granted. She would learn from him, understand his methods, and continue to grow as an engineer. and KIV-9, now restored, would remain a symbol of resilience, collaboration, and the extraordinary bond between a human, an alien, and a machine. Hours later, when the last adjustments were complete, KIV-9 powered fully online. It moved with confidence and stability, sensors glowing softly, its systems integrated and upgraded. Lyra touched its arm gently, a silent thank you to her companion. Then she looked at Jadden, realizing that in this human she had discovered more than a technician. She had found a partner, someone whose courage and ingenuity had turned despair into hope, helplessness into achievement. And as the stars outside the colony shimmered in the endless expanse of space, Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. With KIV-9 restored, with Jadden's guidance, and with a new understanding of what humans were capable of, the future held endless possibilities. The bond between engineer, robot, and human had been forged under the harshest conditions, and nothing in the galaxy could diminish it. The next day, Lyra woke early, her mind buzzing with anticipation. KIV-9, now fully operational, moved around the lab with a smoothness and precision that amazed her. Yet there was still work to be done. The storm had caused more subtle damage than she realized, hidden deep within the robot's systems. Jadden, ever patient and meticulous, was already at the lab, preparing tools and diagnostic equipment. "Good morning," he said, smiling as she entered. "Ready for round 2? Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Yes. I want to make sure KIV is fully stable. Nothing should fail again." Jadden chuckled softly. "That's a good mindset. We'll check every system, and then I'll show you a few ways to reinforce circuits for future protection." As they began work, Lyra noticed the subtle differences in Jadden's approach compared to her own. While she focused on precision and following manuals, he moved with a fluid intuition, testing, observing, and adjusting on the fly. It was almost like he could anticipate the robot's behavior before it happened. She watched him carefully, trying to absorb the techniques he used. KIV-9's movements fascinated her. The robot had regained its previous efficiency, but now, with Jadden's modifications, it seemed even more capable. Its sensors scanned the room continuously, analyzing temperature, humidity, and energy flow. Small adjustments in its posture indicated self-diagnostics at work. Lyra realized that this human had not only repaired KIV-9 but enhanced it, blending alien technology with human ingenuity. Hours passed as they fine-tuned the robot. They checked every actuator, recalibrated sensors, and reinforced critical circuits. During the process, Lyra asked questions, eager to learn. Jadden patiently explained each step, showing her how human techniques could complement alien engineering. It was a lesson in collaboration and adaptation, and Lyra found herself growing as an engineer with every explanation. The colony, as usual, continued its routine outside the lab, but whispers had begun to circulate. The story of a human technician repairing a highly advanced alien robot spread quickly. Workers peeked through observation windows, fascinated by the sight of KIV-9 moving again, now with smoother motions and upgraded systems. Some muttered that humans had capabilities far beyond what they had imagined. Lyra felt a quiet pride in witnessing this, knowing she had played a role in bringing the human here. As midday approached, Jadden paused, stepping back to analyze KIV-9. "I need to check the power matrix," he said. "It's holding, but the energy flow could be optimized." Lyra nodded, observing as he carefully opened a panel on the robot's chest. Inside, a complex array of circuits glimmered under the lab lights. Jadden traced paths with his fingers, occasionally making adjustments. Sparks of light danced across tiny interfaces as he rerouted energy to reduce strain on vulnerable components. Lyra marveled at how calmly he worked, confident in the face of potential failure. KIV-9, for its part, seemed aware of every adjustment. Its visual sensors followed Jadden's hands, and small hums indicated internal diagnostics in progress. Lyra watched in awe. The robot, which had been lifeless days ago, now operated with a level of awareness that made it feel alive. During a brief pause, Lyra asked Jadden how he had learned to work with machines so intuitively. He explained that humans often relied on problem-solving, using both logic and instinct. When encountering something unfamiliar, they observed patterns, tested possibilities, and adapted. Mistakes were seen as lessons, not failures. Lyra found this approach fascinating, realizing it contrasted sharply with her own methodical training. By the afternoon, KIV-9 was running tests on its own systems. Jadden guided the process, showing Lyra how to monitor readings, interpret subtle fluctuations, and make precise adjustments. The robot performed complex movements, lifting tools, adjusting lab equipment, and even performing minor repairs on other devices. Its efficiency had never been higher. While they worked, Lyra noticed something remarkable. KIV-9 seemed to react differently to Jadden than it did to her. Though it had always recognized her as its primary operator, it now responded to the human with subtle acknowledgement, a tilt of its head, a soft hum, movements timed to his gestures. Lyra realized that humans had a way of connecting with machines that transcended programming. Jadden treated KIV-9 not as a tool but as a partner. The day passed quickly, filled with adjustments, tests, and careful observation. Lyra found herself learning faster than ever before. She began to experiment with minor modifications, guided by Jadden's instructions. Together, they optimized KIV-9 systems, enhancing performance without compromising stability. The collaboration was seamless, each of them complementing the other's skills. As evening approached, a sudden power surge shook the lab. Alarms blared and KIV-9 froze momentarily. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had seen surges like this before, and they could damage delicate circuits if not handled quickly. Jadden's hands moved instantly, rerouting power and stabilizing energy flow. The robot's systems blinked back to life, fully operational. Lyra exhaled in relief. "That was close," she said. Jadden smiled calmly. "It's all part of the process. Machines, no matter how advanced, will always encounter unexpected events. The key is how you respond." Later, as they took a break, Lyra reflected on the day's work. KIV-9 was now more than repaired. It had been enhanced and strengthened. And she had learned a great deal from the human beside her. Patience, intuition, courage, and adaptability, all qualities she admired and hoped to emulate. During a quiet moment, KIV-9 approached Lyra and gently touched her arm with one of its articulated hands. The gesture was small but meaningful, a reminder of the bond they shared. Lyra looked at Jadden, who gave a small nod. "It recognizes you," he said softly. "It knows you've cared for it all along." Lyra smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt since before the storm. She realized that KIV-9 was more than a machine. It was a reflection of her own perseverance, her dedication, and now, the cooperation she had found with this human. As night fully fell over the colony, the lab glowed with soft lights, KIV-9 sensors scanning and recording data continuously. Lyra and Jadden reviewed logs, ran final diagnostics, and discussed ways to maintain the robot's enhanced systems. The human's expertise had transformed not just KIV-9, but her understanding of engineering and teamwork. Before leaving the lab for the night, Jadden set up protective protocols for KIV-9. "These will help prevent damage from future storms," he explained. "The robot is strong, but the environment here is harsh. Better safe than sorry." Lyra watched him work, admiring his thoughtfulness. Humans were known for their ingenuity, but also their foresight and consideration. Jadden's presence had brought not just technical skill, but a sense of security and trust she hadn't realized she needed. As they prepared to leave, KIV-9 performed a series of movements that almost seemed like a salute, its sensors fixed briefly on Jadden and then on Lyra. The gesture, though mechanical, carried a sense of recognition and connection. Lyra felt a surge of pride. Her companion was back, stronger than ever, and now fully aware of the care and expertise that had gone into its revival. Walking through the colony's corridors that night, Lyra reflected on the events of the past days. The storm, which had once seemed like a disaster, had brought her into contact with a human whose skills and courage had transformed everything. She realized that sometimes, help could come from the most unexpected places, and that trust and collaboration could achieve what determination alone could not. As she settled in for a brief rest, Lyra could hear KIV-9 softly humming in the lab, running tests and recording data. The sound, once frightening in its silence, now felt comforting. The robot was alive, functional, and ready to assist again, and thanks to Jadden, it was better than ever. Sleep came slowly, filled with thoughts of the day's successes and the possibilities ahead. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more adjustments, and more opportunities to learn. But for now, Lyra allowed herself a quiet sense of accomplishment. Together, human, alien, and robot had faced the storm's aftermath and emerged stronger. In the vast emptiness of space, on a frozen colony far from home, a new bond had formed. KIV-9 had returned to life, and Lyra had discovered a human whose ingenuity and courage could change not only a machine's fate, but also the outlook of an entire colony. The future held endless promise, and she could not wait to see what came next. The following morning, Lyra arrived at the lab earlier than usual, her steps light with anticipation. KIV-9 was already awake, performing self-diagnostics with smooth, precise movements. Its sensors glowed softly, scanning the room and analyzing the environment. Lyra approached her companion, running her hands over its sleek chassis. "Good morning," she whispered. "Ready for another day?" KIV-9 responded with a subtle tilt of its head, a gesture that felt almost like acknowledgement. Jadden was already inside, preparing tools and reviewing the robot's performance logs from the previous day. "Morning, Lyra," he said with a smile. "Looks like KIV-9's stable. Today, we'll focus on optimizing its core functions and improving efficiency." Lyra nodded eagerly. The previous days had been filled with repairs and initial upgrades, but today felt different. Today was about enhancement, taking what they had fixed and making it stronger, smarter, and more resilient. The storm had caused chaos, but it had also given them an opportunity to improve KIV-9 beyond its original design. They began with energy management. Jadden carefully analyzed the power distribution within KIV-9, checking for weaknesses and areas of inefficiency. Lyra observed, taking notes and asking questions. She was fascinated by the human approach, which combined logic with creativity. Where she had always relied on procedures, Jadden improvised solutions, thinking several steps ahead. Hours passed as they worked methodically, adjusting circuits, rerouting energy flows, and calibrating sensors. KIV-9 responded to each change, its movements smooth and controlled. Lyra was struck by the precision and care in Jadden's work. Every adjustment was deliberate, yet fluid, as if he had an innate understanding of how the robot functioned. At one point, they encountered a particularly tricky section of the core. A delicate balance of alien components and human adaptations had caused a slight instability. Lyra frowned, unsure how to proceed. Jadden examined it for a moment, then smiled. "We'll try a different approach," he said. He carefully rewired several pathways, adding subtle reinforcements to stabilize the energy flow. The adjustment worked perfectly, and KIV-9's sensors glowed steadily, its systems humming in harmony. Lyra felt a surge of admiration for Jadden. His ingenuity and calmness under pressure were remarkable. She realized that humans, with their willingness to experiment and adapt, could solve problems that seemed impossible. And it wasn't just his skill that impressed her. It was his patience and respect for the machine, treating it not just as a tool, but as a partner. By midday, KIV-9 was performing self-tests at full capacity. Its movements were precise, its sensors responsive, and its energy systems fully optimized. Lyra watched in awe as her companion lifted tools, adjusted equipment, and even performed minor repairs on other devices in the lab. The robot was not just repaired, it was enhanced, stronger, and more capable than ever. While KIV-9 worked, Lyra and Jadden discussed future improvements. They planned ways to reinforce critical systems against storms, enhance data processing, and improve sensor accuracy. Jadden explained human techniques for redundancy and backup systems, while Lyra shared her knowledge of alien technology. Together, they created a plan that would make KIV-9 virtually indestructible in the colony's harsh environment. The collaboration was seamless. Lyra found herself learning faster than ever, absorbing Jadden's methods and combining them with her own experience. The human's perspective opened new possibilities, teaching her to approach problems with both creativity and logic. It was a lesson in innovation, patience, and partnership. In the afternoon, an unexpected complication arose. KIV-9 detected a minor energy fluctuation in the lab's main power grid. The surge could have damaged delicate circuits if not addressed immediately. Lyra's heart raced as she prepared to intervene, but Jadden was already on it. He quickly assessed the situation, rerouted energy flows, and stabilized the grid. KIV-9 adjusted accordingly, maintaining its operations without interruption. Lyra watched in awe. Humans, she realized, had a remarkable ability to act calmly in crises. Jadden's confidence and quick thinking had saved KIV-9 from potential damage. She felt a deep respect for him, recognizing that his courage and ingenuity were as valuable as his technical skill. After the crisis passed, they returned to their work. Lyra focused on optimizing KIV-9's mobility systems, enhancing its speed and precision. Jadden assisted, demonstrating techniques for fine-tuning actuators and joints. KIV-9 moved through the lab with grace, performing complex maneuvers with ease. The robot's improvements were evident in every motion, a testament to the combined expertise of human and alien. As evening approached, Lyra and Jadden reviewed the day's progress. KIV-9 systems were fully operational, optimized, and reinforced against future challenges. Lyra felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The robot, once broken and lifeless, was now stronger than ever. But more than that, she had gained knowledge, insight, and a newfound respect for humans. Jadden packed up his tools, preparing to leave the lab for the night. Lyra watched him, a thought forming in her mind. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for fixing KIV-9, but for everything you've taught me. I've learned more in these days than I could have imagined." Jadden smiled, a modest expression that belied his confidence. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "You knew the robot better than anyone. I just guided the process. The real work was yours." Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that this experience had changed her. She had always been capable, independent, and skilled, but the collaboration with Jadden had shown her the power of trust, partnership, and openness to new ideas. It was a lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her life. As night settled over the colony, the lab glowed with the soft hum of machinery. KIV-9 continued its self-diagnostics, now fully enhanced and aware of its surroundings. Lyra watched it move, a sense of pride and joy filling her. The robot was more than a machine. It was a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the extraordinary potential that arose when humans and aliens worked together. Before leaving, Lyra made sure KIV-9 was secure, its systems running smoothly. She touched its arm gently, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. "Good night, KIV," she whispered. "You've done well today. Tomorrow we'll continue to grow stronger together." As she stepped out of the lab, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The storm had caused destruction, but it had also created opportunity. It had brought Jadden into her life, teaching her lessons she could never have learned alone. And KIV-9, once broken, now represented the limitless potential of collaboration, courage, and determination. Walking through the colony, Lyra reflected on the journey so far. She realized that the events of the past days had not just repaired a robot. They had strengthened her understanding of engineering, trust, and the remarkable capabilities of humans. In the vast expanse of space, help could come from unexpected places, and sometimes the most extraordinary solutions arose when different species worked together. Reaching her quarters, Lyra settled in for the night, her thoughts filled with possibilities. KIV-9's revival was complete, but the journey was far from over. Together with Jadden, she would continue to improve the robot, strengthen the colony's systems, and explore the limits of their combined ingenuity. The future was bright, filled with challenges, discoveries, and the promise of new horizons. As she drifted into sleep, she could hear KIV-9 softly humming in the lab, running self-tests and maintaining its systems. The sound, once a reminder of vulnerability, now brought comfort and reassurance. Lyra knew that with determination, collaboration, and courage, no challenge was insurmountable. And somewhere in the depths of space, a human technician's skill and bravery had left an indelible mark on an alien engineer, a robot, and an entire colony. Word count. ~1, 805 words the next morning, Lyra arrived at the lab filled with renewed energy. KIV-9 was already active, performing its routine self-diagnostics, its sensors glowing softly as it scanned the room. The robot moved with a precision and grace that amazed her. The previous days had been a whirlwind of repairs, enhancements, and learning. Now everything seemed to have settled into a rhythm. KIV-9 was stronger, smarter, and more reliable than ever. Jadden was waiting, reviewing notes on the robot's system performance. "Morning, Lyra," he said with a calm smile. "Today, we'll focus on integrating KIV-9 fully with the colony's systems. That way, it can assist in more complex tasks and respond to emergencies quickly. Lyra nodded, excitement rising. This final phase of their work would ensure that KIV-9 wasn't just a repaired robot, but a fully capable partner for the colony. She had watched Jadden work for days, learning from his intuition, patience, and human ingenuity. Now she felt ready to apply her knowledge in tandem with his expertise. They began by connecting KIV-9 to the colony's central systems. Jadden guided the process, explaining each step as he carefully linked circuits and data channels. Lyra followed his instructions, her hands steady despite the importance of the task. They worked together, a seamless team, enhancing both KIV-9's capabilities and her own understanding. KIV-9 adjusted smoothly to the integration, its sensors scanning and analyzing each connection. It performed self-diagnostics in real time, verifying that every link was stable. Lyra watched with fascination, noting how the robot had not only recovered from the storm but had evolved. Its movements were fluid, its responses intelligent, and its internal systems optimized beyond their original design. As they progressed, the robot began to assist in minor colony operations. KIV-9 helped manage energy distribution, adjusted environmental controls, and performed maintenance on other machines. Its efficiency amazed both Lyra and Jadden. The collaboration between human, alien, and machine was now fully functional. During a break, Lyra looked at Jadden, gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "I can't believe how much KIV-9 has improved," she said softly. "It's like a new being more capable than I could have imagined." Jadden nodded, his expression modest. "You did most of the work, I just guided it. Your understanding of the robot's behavior made all the difference." Lyra smiled, realizing the truth in his words. The robot had been a reflection of her own dedication, perseverance, and care. But Jadden's guidance had opened new possibilities, teaching her lessons she could not have learned alone. Their partnership had created something extraordinary, a robot stronger than the sum of its parts, and a bond that transcended species. Later in the day, a minor emergency tested their success. A small power surge threatened the colony's environmental systems. Lyra and Jadden watched as KIV-9 responded immediately, rerouting energy, stabilizing circuits, and coordinating with automated systems to prevent damage. The robot's precision and speed were astonishing. Lyra realized that KIV-9's enhancements were not just technical, they were strategic. The robot could now anticipate problems and act proactively, a skill that was crucial in the harsh conditions of the colony. When the crisis passed, Lyra felt a wave of relief and pride. KIV-9 had performed flawlessly, proving that their work had been more than successful. It was a partner, a guardian, and a symbol of what could be achieved through collaboration. As evening fell, the lab glowed with the soft hum of machinery. KIV-9 continued its routines, its sensors adjusting to environmental conditions, optimizing performance, and maintaining stability. Lyra and Jadden reviewed logs, making minor adjustments and planning future improvements. The robot was fully operational, integrated with the colony's systems, and enhanced beyond its original design. In a quiet moment, Lyra turned to Jadden. "You've taught me so much," she said. "I've learned about problem-solving, creativity, and patience. I think I understand humans a little better now." Jadden smiled, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Humans are capable of many things, especially when they work together with others. You've done an incredible job here." The robot's recovery and enhancement are proof of that. Lyra realized that this journey had been about more than just KIV-9. It had been a lesson in trust, collaboration, and the power of combining different perspectives. The storm had forced her to ask for help, to open herself to a new way of thinking, and to embrace the potential of humans. In doing so, she had not only saved her robot, but had also grown as an engineer and as a person. KIV-9, sensing the calm in the lab, approached Lyra. Its movements were deliberate and smooth, almost as if it wanted to communicate its own acknowledgement. Lyra reached out and placed her hand on its arm. The robot's sensors glowed softly, a quiet response that filled her with warmth. It was a simple gesture, but to Lyra, it meant everything. Night deepened over the colony, and Lyra finally allowed herself to rest. She lay in her quarters, her mind filled with reflections on the past days. The storm had been devastating, leaving destruction in its wake, but it had also created opportunities. It had brought Jadden to her side, teaching her lessons she would never forget. And it had given KIV-9 a new life, stronger, smarter, and more capable than ever before. Sleep came slowly, filled with thoughts of future possibilities. Lyra knew that the work was not over. There would be more challenges, more storms, and more systems to maintain. But now she felt prepared. With KIV-9 by her side and Jadden's guidance as a reference, she knew that the colony could survive, adapt, and thrive. The next morning, Lyra returned to the lab, energized and ready to continue. KIV-9 was already active, performing tasks autonomously and efficiently. The robot's sensors scanned for anomalies, its systems self-adjusting to optimize performance. Lyra and Jadden reviewed the logs, fine-tuning KIV-9's behavior and preparing it for even more complex tasks. Over the following days, KIV-9's capabilities expanded. It assisted in repairs across the colony, coordinated with automated systems, and even provided minor guidance to other engineers. The robot was no longer just Lyra's companion. It had become an integral part of the colony's operations, a symbol of resilience and collaboration. Lyra and Jadden continued to work together, enhancing both the robot and the colony's systems. Each day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new discoveries. They learned from each other, combining human ingenuity with Lyra's deep understanding of alien technology. The result was a thriving partnership, one that transformed both the robot and the engineers themselves. One evening, as they completed another round of system checks, Lyra paused to reflect. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had brought growth, learning, and unexpected friendship. The storm, once seen as a disaster, had ultimately led to new possibilities. Jadden noticed her thoughtful expression. "You've been quiet," he said. Lyra smiled. "I'm just thinking about how much has changed. KIV-9 is more than repaired. The colony is safer, and I've learned more in these days than I ever imagined. And I've learned the value of trust and collaboration. It's remarkable how much humans and aliens can achieve together." Jadden nodded. "It's been an extraordinary experience, and it's only the beginning. With the robot fully functional and the systems optimized, the colony has a chance to thrive in ways it never could before." KIV-9 moved closer, its sensors glowing with subtle recognition. It extended one articulated hand toward Lyra, a gesture of acknowledgement and connection. Lyra reached out, placing her hand against its arm. The touch was simple, yet profound, symbolizing the bond between engineer, technician, and machine. As the stars outside the colony shimmered in the endless expanse of space, Lyra felt a sense of fulfillment. KIV-9 was alive and thriving, the colony was safe, and she had discovered the remarkable potential of collaboration between species. The future held endless possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them. Jadden packed his tools for the night, preparing to rest before his departure. "I'm proud of what we've accomplished," he said quietly. "The robot is stable, the colony is secure, and you've learned to apply human techniques in ways that will serve you well in the future." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Jadden, for everything. Not just for fixing KIV-9, but for teaching me, guiding me, and showing me what humans are capable of." He nodded modestly. "It was a privilege to work with you. The robot is remarkable, and so are you. Remember, the galaxy is full of challenges, but also full of opportunities. Trust in your skills and in the possibilities of collaboration." That night, Lyra returned to her quarters, reflecting on the journey from despair to triumph. The storm had been a trial, but it had led to growth, learning, and unexpected friendships. KIV-9, once broken and lifeless, now stood as a symbol of resilience and ingenuity. And she knew that with determination, trust, and collaboration, even the harshest environments could be overcome. As she drifted to sleep, the hum of KIV-9 systems filled the lab, steady and reassuring. Lyra felt a profound sense of peace. The robot was safe, the colony was secure, and the bond between human, alien, and machine had been forged stronger than ever. The future was wide open, full of challenges to face and possibilities to explore. For the first time in many long days, Lyra felt truly hopeful. The storm had passed, KIV-9 had risen stronger, and she had discovered the extraordinary potential that arose when courage, skill, and trust combined. And in that quiet, expansive space, surrounded by stars and the hum of machinery, Lyra knew that anything was possible.